blessed love and peace in Rastafari. This is another Ramadan mukbang, iftar, kind of sort of. Havdalah, concluding Shabbat on the eve of Easter. Mindfulness, samadhi, and a painful elbow. That's another story though. So we're just gonna get into this joint. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Dao ke dao fei cheng dao. Ming ke ming fei cheng ming. Ja Rastafari. Deus nos daqui essentiale Santo Vakito nomentum. Vaheguru Sanam. Baruch atah Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lachem min haaretz. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sevamastu, savejigatahi, sabe sata bavantu sukitata. Fagabiyam. Nakwaba upendo na amani. The Kyrie nesenami, chinte dam per me, lieb of me womajiga. Dumbuntu shabana fikika. Sheshem, como sonida, domo arigato, pelama yelo woka toko 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 shingun, gomen God. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata Jamya Yatafnami. Badu, Nahu, Nom Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. So, just on the point of candidness, candidness. Shabbat. Oh, what up? I think y'all got food. That's that flying squirrel right there as I approach the corner of the table here. The flying squirrel is right in the eye vicinity. That's not that profound, but that's okay. So actually this past week, the spiritual practice here, give thanks and praise, gets increasingly stronger. I'm able to complete much of the daily routine, not all of it every day, each for the entirety of the week, but a considerable amount, much further than the recent weeks. And so we give thanks for that. Now, that being said, even at the weekly sequence of Aiga Munga, that's heat from the rice. That's visible. That's evaporation. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's very visible for moi. I don't know how visible it is on this joint. There it is. But what had actually hit me was the water vapors that fell down from the top of the lid. Fell down from the top. Alright, this is white basmati rice, and one of the things that's taught is to give it some air after cooking it. I let it sit for a little bit. So white basmati rice is very gourmet, which is most likely the reason why it's much further popular than the brown rice, which is very confidently healthier than the white rice, but less available. Market conditions. Haha, how about that? Just because it's popular don't mean it's the best thing. How about that? It doesn't mean it should be policy either. Them greens. So we got greens cooking too. Oh, that's funny. And curry from yesterday, Shabbat dinner. Spiritual practice. So Juma, I'm able to complete. We do Juma here, for the most part, and then Shabbat. So Shabbat goes decently. A lot of the preparations in terms of cleaning and everything else, it goes decently. Lighting candles, decent sequencing in terms of the soleil and everything. So, but then today, um, Shabbat dinner, even do some benching. Fell asleep halfway through the benching. Lightweight. That's not uncommon. Um, so then get up, begin prayers and meditation today. Even do daven shachrit. Take a break because that's the methodology. Otherwise, it's half sleep recitations afterwards. So that's just what we're at the moment. So then I do that, and then in doing that, actually, even did I do that? No, actually, yeah, I did, but not a nap, just a break. Usually have something to eat, to be honest, but fasting right now, so don't. What up? Come on, y'all got food. Serious. Usually when the flying squirrels start like being very visible, there it's a message like, yo, what's going on? I think there's rice out there, and they might catch a whiff of what I got going on. Like, yo, what you got going on? What you got going on? Because they like the peanuts, and I put out peanuts recently. They're like, yo, you got some peanuts. You got peanuts. Yo, birds are at the peanuts. Squirrels, flying squirrels are at the peanuts. The animal brethren and sister know. But right now it's just rice. So, anyway, all right. So then Shabbat. Point being, long story short, didn't do the readings today. Wada, didn't do the recitation. And yo, there's these mini fruit flies. I don't know what's going on with that. So still figuring that one out. So, anyways, I'm dealing with those conditions at the moment, and still having this experience of just emerging from Shabbat and having the ideas and ideas are messages in and of themselves, and but I won't say callings or guidance, but just this like solicitation, I'll say. So that's what we're doing here, and we're supposed to be getting off this show. All right. Sriracha. I've mentioned before the magnificence of sriracha and curry. Blada. All right. So, anyways, that's the scene from today. Recent things. Weather. The spring. It's generally getting warmer. Still has the propensity of getting cold. Clear skies today. Actually, no, it wasn't. Actually, what am I talking about? It was overcast, and that's something of what contributed to the situation with reading, because it was difficult to discern what hour it was in the day actually, and how much time was left in terms of daylight. That's no excuse, but it is a causal factor. But ultimately, it's all me. It's all on me. It's all on me. It's all on me. All right. So, topic for today. Psychosis of citizenship, self-destruction, the last of the Americans, and solutions. We are going to pause for the cause of checking on the bedecking of the specking, whatever. before we get in, before we get into the joint, I will share some medicinal vibrations about the food in this participation. First, kinfolk, particularly, I think, to be honest, kinfolk who have the consciousness amongst our brethren and sisters of the Akbalun kin. Akbalan. Let's talk about discussion, pronunciation, and respect. So, not to sleep on the greens from the Asian market. Them got greens galore, them brethren and sisters. So, I'm studying. One of the greens here in this mix we got cooking is like a mustard green, but it's different. The flavor of it is like mustard, but different and less expensive. There's bok choy, there's mini bok choy, and there's mini bok choy in the mix today. To be honest, I think here there's a preference for the regular bok choy. But it's also a matter of what you do with the greens, how you're preparing it, what the dishes, what the intentions are. So, but anyways, no greens are medicine, and they're greens from all grounds. The other thing also, it's been a minute. Is the soybeans. I may mention that recently. These joints are way too greasy, way too greasy. So, one of the ways of preparing it, I don't know how visible that is, and I don't know how visible it's going to be, but it also is very greasy. Actually, this is not too bad. With the co-op we got stacks of these joints. And I mentioned before, the initial intention of preparing some tofu at this moment is just a matter of practicalities and priorities. So one of the ways another way of preparing soybeans is soaking it like black beans, and then baking it as a snack, like an alternative to potato chips, snack chips and stuff like that. It's very healthy, but the thing is, don't have much flavor. But what certain kinfolk recognizes that's potential, that's opportunity, because you can flavor it how you want. So that's what I'm working on here, is discerning. And I ain't the master chef or whatever, but learning and then sharing with kinfolk who can do that. It's been a minute since I prepared this. The consistency of the baked soybeans, some people describe it kind of like peanuts. A little bit different because it doesn't have that like the fat, smooth texture that peanuts do in that crunch. This is like this is like a wheat kind of crunch. And again, without the flavor, like peanuts, there's a richness, almost like that's very satisfying. It's the fat that's in it, and this has very little fat. It's soybeans. It's if I to my understanding, it's a legume. So it doesn't have that, again, that rich kind of like thing, like that comforting thing, like with like ice cream, that peanuts and other tree seeds provide, cashews, almonds even, and the ilk. So, but it does have a crunchiness. It has the size. It has the roundness like a peanut. I'm trying to think of what it actually is like, the crunch of it. Um, I'm still working on it. I'm trying to think. I've been trying to think of like how to compare that, but the thing is, you can flavor it. Like I said, so what I did here, I baked it to the point of getting pretty much cooked. I was going to put it in the wok to fry it up, but I got the greens in the wok right now. So instead, I just poured some oil on it, and too much, and then put a little bit of salt. Actually, a fair amount of salt I put on it. Probably I don't generally cook with salt, to be honest. I wait for people can flavor it at the table. Um, but I put salt on this, and then some onion salt, just because we had onion salt. I've been using garlic significantly, so I figure balance it up. And at first, I was not expecting very much because when I smelled the salt when I first poured it on, it smelled stale because I haven't used it in a long time. But it actually tastes much better than I was expecting, and that's what oil and salt does. But just like rice, just like with tofu, you can flavor it in many different ways, um, as a snack thing. All right. So, all right. That being said, we also have some Napa cabbage, um, from the greens. Mmm, that's table manners. Depending upon where we are. So getting into the topic. It sounded like such positive affirmational topics. The psychosis of citizenship. To begin with, wow, yay. Let's talk about that. Well, it's essential, to be honest, because it is pervasive and it's significant. The basic idea is what people basically avoid, which is the fact that in a republic, democracy, slow up, ease up, chill out, what up? In a democratic system, a republic, people are supposed to have people are supposed to be at the top of the political food chain, so to speak, the hierarchy of government. And with that, there's the notion of individual will, at least in American style democracy. There are the freedoms and rights in addition. So people tout that, people expect it, people value that, people preach and proselytize that. And there are benefits with that. It does provide this alleviation of the psychological oppression, the psychological subjugation to somebody else, to a king or to a dictator or whatever else. A lot of people are feeling angst and existential like frustration. There's a relief. There's a relief that conceptually, abstractly, ideologically, that there's not somebody's not a man, particularly for a man. A man is not less than or beholden to or lower than the whatever authority figures. Even when it's a president or whatever, well, just wait 4 years and then we'll get another president or whatever. We just have to bide our time. So that's a huge thing, psychologically, civilizationally. It's beneficial. And then people talk about the responsibilities of citizenship and voting and Paying taxes is not necessarily an element of citizenship. It goes with that, but it's not necessarily the same thing. People can be resident and still pay tax and not be a citizen, and have the obligation of paying tax too. So, I'll try to be concise and just articulate this. One of the benefits is of the democracy is not having somebody over someone else's head existentially. Uh, um, Hypothetically, supposedly. And then there are the freedoms of I can do this, I can do that, and that's not necessarily, again, it's not necessarily democracy that provides that, but when the notion of individual liberty is fused with the practice of democracy, that becomes the practice and the culture. So it's I can do this if I want, I can do this if I want, I can do this if I want. In a capitalist economy, then it's just a matter of I can do this if I want and I have enough money, which itself becomes another methodology of governance and subordination, but that's another story. It's another ism. But anyways, liberty and equality in terms of political hierarchy. Each citizen is supposedly equal. So psychologically, that provides a lot of bandwidth, a lot of relief and refuge, and less frustration, animosity, and hostility about trying to get control over others. So it's a very, very potent political philosophy and tool. So there's that. Now the flip side of that is that, one, when people are all equal, the citizens are equal and vote for the official leadership to administrate the affairs of government, all the citizens are responsible for those decisions. All those citizens have to answer for that. So when the leaders and everything else make bad decisions or poor decisions or whatever else, even when the citizens didn't vote for that, even when the citizens disagree with that, the citizens still are guilty, 100% guilty for everything the leaders do. And people in the democracy today and for generations don't want to acknowledge that, don't want to admit that, don't want to think about that. And instead, oh, it's their fault, oh, it's their fault, oh, it's their fault. No, citizen, it's yours. So that's part of the psychosis, the promotion of citizenship and all the benefits, but not wanting to accept the liabilities and the responsibilities and the consequences of citizenship, of the bombs that are killing women and children, of the oppression, of the raping and pillaging of peoples and lands and nature. Every citizen is guilty, 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 guilty. Facts. And don't want to admit it and ignore it and da. No, and that's where the psychosis comes in, because on one hand, oh, citizens, and it's my right to do this and my right to do that, I can do whatever, but then on the other side, oh, no, it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Psychosis of citizenship. There's another element here, but I might just have to leave that as it is for the moment. It escapes me at the moment. So it's important to recognize that, because that's just the nature of it. It's been that way since Gideon, and oh yeah, that's the other thing. People don't want to admit it. People don't want to acknowledge it. So the two benefits. The two benefits are, again, the equality and not having somebody officially over somebody else and not having to bow down to somebody else officially, like literally like bow down to somebody else. That's one benefit. The other benefit is the liberties. I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do what I want, blah, 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 blah. It's my right, it's my right, it's my right. Those are the two benefits. Equality and liberty. Significant, huge. Now the flip side, the two accountabilities. One is the guiltiness, the accountability for being in charge, for being the leader, for being at the top. and not wanting to accept that responsibility, not wanting to accept the consequences, and blaming somebody else for doing that. That's the one thing. The second thing, and this is even further insidious, which is reaping the benefits, continually reaping the benefits of the atrocities that the administration is doing. So when the atrocities are committed, not wanting to take responsibility for that, knowing, recognize it, you did it. You literally did it, citizen. You did it. You did it. That's one thing. Then, in addition to that, getting the benefits of that. So, the benefits of that include um, uh, taking the materials, the minerals, the gold, the diamonds, the technology, the land, the produce, the labor that's taken um, from the violence, from the atrocities, from the bombs on other lands, on other peoples, even within the domestic situation, and then it's put on the market at an inexpensive price. So every time people purchase these things, that's reaping the benefits of the atrocities and not recognizing what the actual price is and what the cost is involved. That's the second thing, and that's not necessarily a political thing, but the two are linked in it, and it's further part of the psychosis of the citizen, of not recognizing and not acknowledging, and hiding from the atrocities, but still wanting to benefit from it. The psychosis of the citizenship, the psychosis of citizenship, or the psychosis of the citizen. Um, so there's that, and it's unpleasant, but it's necessary to recognize, because that it's only in reconciling that people all across the board experience any enduring well-being. And then we get to the second joint. Second topic, I think, was self-destruction. So, oh, serious. This is like the third time I almost knocked over this tea. Oh, am I not benefiting from everything? Of course, and this is part of my responsibility of acknowledging that. And I can also talk about that if anybody wants to accuse me of being hypocritical and reaping the benefits that come from the system. Um, Vocal visitation. Checking on the soybeans. So am I guilty too? You betcha. Everybody is. And so there are degrees and there's proximities and everything else like that. But everybody is. Everybody is. Newborn babies are. At the same time, there's some who are further culpable and additionally. But anyways, without getting into all the pointing fingers or whatever, everybody is. Self-destruction. There's a track in the 90s. Early 90s, late 80s, but early 90s. East Coast All-Stars. Hip hop. Complete a positive compilation or ensemble track encouraging people to stop committing violence against each other, particularly amongst people of African ancestry against each other. And the title of the track was Self-Destruction. And in seeing it as a youngster, it is inspiring. It is encouraging. Oh, here are some adults who have popularity, who have influence, who are advocating peace and not to get violent and everything else like that. Here's an encouragement. Here's a reason. Here's an excuse not to get in a fight. Remember what the East Coast All-Star said. Now, obviously, some cats are less enthused or convinced about it than others, but it does provide benefit. However, when one matures and learns further about the world game, the things that kinfolk on the streets are doing and have done for generations at each other, ignorant, knucklehead type stuff, is the same thing that governments are doing to each other, the same thing that religions are doing to each other. So to have this message of like, oh, the streets have to be peaceful, and particularly black folk have to be peaceful, or Latinos have to be peaceful with each other, or Asians have to be peaceful with each other, when the governments are at war with each other, it's just hypocritical bullshit. And it's like, a flying squirrel is just peeping me out. Y'all got food. I'm serious. Don't y'all have food? Yeah, y'all got food. You don't want what I'm eating. They look at me. They like, yo, what's he eating? Because I know they do this before. I've given you the nice stuff. Maybe they want some white basmati rice. I don't know. But yo, he be eyeballing me serious. And it's only, I know what you're saying. The thing is, the flying squirrels don't make themselves visible very conspicuously. So for the flying squirrel just to be sat there, upside down, on the side of the building, just sat there looking at me, is for a reason. You don't have any peanuts. You have brown basmati rice. That's healthier than the white basmati rice. I imagine you don't eat the greens. I haven't seen you eat greens. That's what I have. They might smell it. They might smell some onion or whatever, but come on. It's right at the window too. It's right at the window. Steady staring at me. Anyway, all right. You win. You won the scaring contest. That's impressive. And I already know y'all. I know y'all. Y'all are impressive. I'm not sleeping on y'all. But anyways. All right. Self-destruction. When governments do it, hypocritical. And it's not even just hypocritical. It's intentional. It's just like buying back the guns, taking everybody else's gun, but the government keeps its gun. I'm not a gun advocate. I don't have a gun. But I'm just saying, that's not a genuine policy. So anyways, that being said, there is a genuine affinity for the proclamation of peace, and additionally for people to stop and avoid self-destruction, personal individual self-destruction, but then also community self-destruction. So part of that process of stopping self-destruction is acknowledging the things that are self-destructive. I have some notes here. And then in acknowledging self-destruction, it can be very difficult to stop, particularly when it's a collective, like a communal experience, because people's relationships and economics and additionally are enveloped in the people and others who are enveloped in that self-destructive behavior. So it's something easier said than done, but part of the remedy, part of the solution is distancing oneself from the behavior, from the kinfolk who are enveloped in self-destruction, in self-destructive behavior. So I can give some examples of what that is. I mean, sex, drugs, violence, that's some self-destructive behavior. So there's that. Now, one of the reasons why I'm sharing this particular idea or this particular consideration is because I shared a recent joint about pedophilia and recent recognition in communication of pedophilia actually being So that's the onion salt finding its way onto the bottom of the baking pan. So I mentioned recently about the pedophilia actually being permitted within certain traditions, presumably, and painfully recognizably permitted within certain traditions. And just to be further clear, it's and particularly pedophilia, just like slavery and through the guise of slavery, being permitted against people who are against children of another community, children of another religion, children of another ethnicity, or otherwise. Just like enslavement of others, of foreigners. Let's just use that word. Enslavement of foreigners is permitted to this day, at this very moment. And in a similar and coinciding manner, pedophilia of foreign children is permitted. And that is just to recognize that, and without that being explicitly, thoroughly denounced and discredited or whatever, saying, oh, Peter, you're full of shit, that's not right. Without that being said, that's the actuality. And when that's the actuality, recognizing like how it's going on right now. It's not a matter of like saying just Orthodox members of any particular community committing that at the moment, but at least in terms like of a pervasive number amount. However, it's a matter of understanding how that permissibility is utilized in a systemic intentional generation after generation way of motivations within one's own community, subjugations of other communities, and manipulations of diplomacy and trade and military, and additionally amongst the aggregate of communities. It's a very powerful, when a community is permitted to do those things, it has very powerful earthly implications. Again, of motivating people, of signing deals, and additionally, um, so I mean, if you think about just like how corporate deals are done, and how treaties are done, and negotiations between nations, how women are utilized, exploited as part of it. Um, I've talked before about the art of seduction and the weapon of seduction, and additionally, um, children are a much of even further influential uh, tool and victim in that process of exploitation. Um, so when that's allowed by the actual hard, like the hierarchy, the leadership, the very core of a traditional community, it's difficult to address that, because it's not, the core, that leadership isn't the one that's involved in directly. It's there are the buffers and everything else like that, and but it's allowable, and because of that, like the mass of the community itself is impotent to address it and to alleviate and to stop it, um, because even the most the strongest leaders are precluded from arguing against it, because it's the tradition that allows it. It's not the leaders that are allowing it, it's the tradition that allows it. And for those who have the motivation of doing it, the people who have minds and monies and everything else like that, and say, "Oh, we can do this. This is part of our thing. We can do this, and this is what we stand to gain from it, and this is how it's going to benefit us, and everything else like that." And if you don't allow us to do it, somebody else is going to. So, because it's the tradition, it's extremely difficult. Um, that's the actuality. So, and that's not just one tradition. I'm speaking generally, because I'm not trying to implicate. I'm not trying to hate on anyone. This is coming from a practitioner of these traditions and these principles. So it's not downing anybody. It's not vilifying any community or any tradition. It's recognizing that these things are allowed historically, um, in many generations ago. It's still allowed today through different pretenses and rationalizations and whatever else. But when law enforcement agents, when leaders of governments, when leaders of communities generally want to stop the harm and protect the well-being of children, women, and additional kinfolk who are in vulnerable positions from these types of exploitations and harms, um, this is one of the challenges in doing it. So this is something that needs to be reconciled. And now that I've already talked briefly about that before. What I'll say now, in addition to that, is this: just like certain atrocities like pedophilia are permissible within certain traditions when it's committed against a foreign victim, there are other types of atrocities that are permitted as well, including promoting and investing the self-destruction of foreign communities through sex, through drugs, through violence. Um, and there are many different ways that works, different ways that happens. But basically, it's just a matter of a community having a certain amount of resources, a certain amount of influence, whatever, and then members of that community going to another community and finding viable agents, and then providing some benefits to those agents. Is, hey, you know what? Here's some money. Here's some this. Here's some land, whatever. Here's some whatever is necessary to do this venture. And in this venture, you can recruit people. I've got to be careful saying this in second person. In this venture, the agent who's selling out the agent's own people, and I'll use the masculine here. He's selling out his own people, and getting benefit from another community for doing it. But it seems like the whole operation seems positive and affirmation because he has money, he has support. He's from that particular community, and particularly when he has knowledge and can give like this nice spiel and explanation and rationalization. Wow. But he's actually being subsidized and paid for by the agent, by the original community, for causing self-destruction in the agent's own community. Again, sex is one of the ways. Prostitution, sex trafficking, that's self-destruction. It may be less evident in terms of the eventuality, but it's self-destruction. Drugs, drug addiction as a community, self-destruction. Violence. We talked before about the political warfare in Jamaica. That's self-destruction. So there are a number of additional ways, but those are some of the prominent ways. So again, when acknowledging the self-destruction behavior, it's a matter of distancing ourselves from it as much as possible. Not blaming anybody, not blaming the original community. We only have ourselves to blame. There may be vulnerabilities, but we each have a choice of what we do in every situation, and what we accept, what we don't accept, and further. So that and there's outright oppression, and there's those elements, but particularly when it comes down to the notion and the experience of self-destruction, and even when it's subsidized self-destruction from another community, it's still a matter of recognizing our own responsibility for that. What we ourselves are doing individually, what each of us are doing, that is affirmational and that's self-destructive, and then making decisions that are further healthy and affirmational. So it's one thing to do it as individuals, but when we identify as community, it's a matter of that's when it can be further challenging, because many kinfolk in the community might be involved in elements that are in behavior that's self-destructive, and that can be difficult to effectively distance ourselves from that. But again, we have a choice. So that's one thing. Now that gets kind of into the next part of this experience of self-destruction, because one of the reasons why self-destruction tactics are, well, what we observe today, scratch that too. When it's oppression, when it's out and out oppression, it's easier to call out. and it has further susceptibility for being overthrown one way or the other, from another competitor or from within, and people rising up and taking over. That's why the new imperialism, the evolved imperialism, is less and less outright oppression. It's less and less a matter of a show of force about militaries marching through the streets and saying, if you don't do what we say, da 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 da. That's not typically the imperialism of today. It's not the evolved imperialism. The evolved imperialism is increasingly subtle and indirect. It's the passive imperialism. And much of it relies upon manipulation and people devolving and sliding into increasingly self-destructive behavior, so that there's always the ability, the capability of blaming the person for the person's afflictions, because there's very strong reason. The person is doing it to the person's self. Now, the person, in the typical new imperialistic methodology, the person is just so discouraged and kind of pushed into this element of doing it. All right. But the point is that outright oppression, outright when police come down and kill somebody, when that's it's easier to stand up to that and resist it, and then cause an uproar about it and do something different about it. When it's somebody doing it oneself, it's further difficult to remedy. It's further difficult to heal, and promote the well-being in that respect. So one of the ways that of new imperialism is just by causing stress, putting pressure on people, debt, expectations, insecurity about this pretense of privilege of not belonging, and so having to like compensate in order to just fit in, and additionally all these pressures that erode the sense of self, and give people stress, and that stress manifests itself in dis-ease in terms of high blood pressure, sexual promiscuity, looking for affirmation of self, and additionally drugs, alcohol, in terms of just getting some kind of like break mentally, psychologically, cognitively. So, but then these are self-destructive behaviors. And then it's easy for others, outsiders, to blame the people for doing that. Even in the whole thing about mental health, it's a passive aggressive non-condemnation. It's not that person's fault. They were just born that way. They're genetically inferior, and so. But still, it's still the acquiescence and the acquiescence to the oppression and hostility. So, but just recognizing that, again, we only have ourselves to blame. It's a matter of recognizing what the conditions are, and in this particular context, recognizing what the self-destructive behavior is, and then whatever we're doing, particularly that is self-destructive, getting a distance from that. And when we are discouraged into self-destructive behavioral conditions where other people like it's the norm of being self-destructive, to be like, no, we're gonna have to figure something else out here. We do have those decisions, and even and it can be very difficult to stand up for just our well-being. But when we recognize that, we call it out for what it is. No, that's self-destructive behavior there. I don't want to be a part of that. Just logically, it's difficult for the hierarchies to impose that, because once it's imposed, then it becomes visible and culpable and accountable and targeted for change. So if we just plainly, objectively say, yo, that's self-destructive behavior there. That's unhealthy food. I don't want to eat unhealthy food. That's intoxicants that leaves confusion and further derision of or diminution of like healthy behavior. I don't want to be in that environment. Um, that is increasingly um, I want to say effective because that might sound like it's challenging the policies. That is appropriate. So, recognize that. With that being said, what we do observe is some very pervasive activities of society that are self-destructive across all the boundaries of ethnicity and class and religion, and additionally some of that self-destructive behavior is cars. It's self-destructive. um, Other activity is um, the I'm trying to think of the right word, the probably accurate word about reduction or like the decreasing health caused by internet communication. And additionally, there's that's self-destructive. It's eating at relationships, meaningful relationships. And when it's compounded and aggravated, um, the consequences are self-destructive, particularly communally. So, recognizing that, it's a matter of distancing ourselves from that. Reducing how much we drive, as I mentioned before, fasting 3-4 days a week, and then even further, limiting how much we interact with people who don't do that, with people who are involved heavily in the self-destructive behavior. Recognizing driving as self-destructive, recognizing internet communication as self-destructive, and then distancing ourselves from that. Just like with gang violence, just like with sexual exploitation, prostitution, pornography, just like with drugs, and additionally, all those other types of self-destructive behavior, driving is self-destructive behavior. Driving kills further people than alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, heroin. Self-destructive. Internet communication may not directly cause death, but we can see how much dis-ease it causes. Lapse of concentration, difficulty, the insecurities, isolationism, depression, confusion, all these other experiences of mental health. We can do a study about the correlation between the diagnoses of mental health and the utilization of the internet. It's a very general hypothesis, but there's legitimacy within that. So, just like we recognize those things I mentioned before, drugs, sex, violence as self-destructive, recognizing these other things that are very, very practiced much as a normal part of society as self-destructive, and distancing ourselves from that legitimately, not hating anybody, just saying this is self-destructive behavior. We want some distance from this individually, but then also communally as a collective. And as a caveat to that, just like with alcohol, just like with violence, just like with sex, it's not a matter of saying absolutely nothing. As it pertains to sex, obviously, inappropriate circumstances, husband and wife, there it is. It's the excessiveness and further that is self-destructive. When it comes to alcohol, drugs, alcohol is a type of medicine when used appropriately. When it used excessively, it's poisonous, it's self-destructive. Marijuana, similarly. Cocaine, similarly. So, driving. Well, let's say violence. Guns, I'm not promoting guns, but having devices, non-lethal self-defense devices, having non-lethal methodologies, weapons like sound cannons, um, scramblers that interfere in terms of like drone signals and other types of satellite guided weaponry. Additionally, all these things that are not lethal, very legitimate. So it's not a matter of absolutely no weapons at all. It's a matter of distancing ourselves from the self-destructive behavior of weapons. That sounds like a little bit of a like double talk kind of rationale, but it's sound. There's a sound distinction of what I'm describing. But then also, as we talk about driving, it's not a matter of like outlawing absolutely all vehicles. Vehicular transportation provides very tremendous and necessary benefits of transportation, and additionally, it's a matter of recognizing where to draw the line concerning the transportation, and recognizing that at this moment it's excessive, and that's poisonous, and that's self-destructive. Grease, fast food, processed food, poison, fast food, drive-through fast food that's processed, poison, self-destructive behavior. So again, stepping away, distancing ourselves from that, and distancing ourselves from those who are enveloped in that type of behavior. As I'm saying this, what I'm thinking about is like, again, I'm applying it to my own life. I have many dear loved ones who are involved in the behavior. And so I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to condemn. I'm not trying to be on a soapbox per se. What I'm imploring is for kinfolk just simply to recognize what is self-destructive. And for those who are able to recognize what is self-destructive, to discuss how to cultivate how to cultivate certain distance from the self-destructive behavior, because it is killing life, killing the trees, killing people, and additionally, that's literally self-destruction, and it's increasing and it's pervasive. It's an emergency situation at this moment. So, all right. When I think about how I cultivate that within my life, even or around my loved ones, what I'm recognizing is that without being preachy, without being over the top and like authoritarian. One thing I think I can do is simply just be further present in the lives of my loved ones. And be further regular, be further light in terms of what I talk about, what I share. Talk about nature. Talk about things that, talk about music in addition. So that those stresses and everything else that people are, and particularly my loved ones are, endeavoring to balance through these other excesses are dealt with, are balanced in an increasingly healthy way with less grease. Yeah, that's a lot of grease. I told you, I said there's a lot of grease on there. But it did turn out, the baking level turned out decent with these soybeans. And the flavor is very available. I just put onion, salt, and salt, onion powder and salt on this. Either onion, salt, or onion powder, one of them joints. So, all right. I already said Last of the Americans, but here we go. So this is based upon the I'm gonna turn off my greens because they've been stewing and brewing like I ain't been doing. The greens done already been turned off. That's all right. So all right, this is the Last of the Americans. So for basically this is just basic, but the title or whatever is like, and the concept is based upon the notion of the Last of the Mohicans. That whole concept is also very derogatory. And just think that's part of the purpose of saying this notion of Last Americans. Last of the Mohicans is a story, it's a film. I haven't seen it. I can glean the gist of it. This notion about the disappearing indigenous, it's a widespread trope within American society, this notion of the disappearing native. And even for those of the immigrants who are empathetic, it's still a very hypocritical empathy of like, it's just such a tragic story. It's so sad. What happened to the native people, and I feel so bad about it. In actuality, it's not stopped. There's still native people here, so it's a little bit of a premature sympathy, which exactly is hypocritical, and as it's continued to commit the atrocity. So, there's a recent past 10, 20 years or whatever of film of the Avatar that just kind of like doubled down on that trope of the tragic immigrant. Having such of an affection for native culture, and additionally, but then the destruction of it in addition, like the inevitability, like it's just whatever. And it's that particularly perception and that proclamation of the inevitability, like it's just going to happen. Nobody can help it. It's just, no, that's bullshit. I remember being at a critical mixed race studies conference, actually the most recent one I attended, 5, 6 years ago. Um, it was it was very troubling because what I observe is just like what I observe is young people being championed and heroed for throwing non-imperialist culture under the bus. Not just under the bus, but just annihilating it. One's own culture, but doing it in a way that I just mentioned, of just the tragic trope. Um, but it's all the whole premise of critical mixed race studies is assimilating into the Eurocentric based imperialism, and by that I mean imperialism is a worldwide phenomenon. Every ethnicity has an element of that. It's not exclusive and it's not originating from Eurocentric culture, but part of the methodology, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, of imperialism is utilizing Eurocentric culture as a standard, um, and then drawing the lines of divide and conquer, the binaries based upon that, and rewarding assimilation into the Eurocentric trope. So this is applied to the mixed heritage community by identifying as mixed heritage and then attaining the favorable minority status, but in doing it, in one way or another, disassociating with the non-standard culture of whatever one's affiliation is. And so even though identifying as mixed, it's still at the cost of relinquishing one's other heritage. And so that's what I observed at the conference. Particularly, I mean, the all the all the topics, all the presenters of the leadership, the professors and everybody else. And I don't mean to sound hating. I'm just observing this because this is what I'm talking about. And people, we can reason it, but all the and I've presented it. I've been the cat. Um, so the selected leaders who are the ones who are doing who lead the presentations and the workshops and everything else like that. The very many of the presentations are based upon an essential presumption of just assimilating within the mainstream culture. Even the notions of internationalism, and additionally, is very much like international schools, just a very American, Eurocentric, imperialist model. And even just the way that it's framed as an academic um, uh, coalition. It's academia itself is the most one of the. It's like the front line of class apartheid within the United States. So pretty much anyone who's like endeavoring to go to the university, particularly at this moment, is working to get into that side of the apartheid binary. Um, so, anyways, that's just the premise. And then, but I just remember listening. That's the leadership. Then when I heard the youth, that's when it becomes like very evident of like where people's minds and hearts are in this particular scene. It's not all of mixed people, and it's not all the critical mixed race studies, and it's not all necessarily intentional. But this is what I observed. Um, there was the open mic night part, and so like youth were invited to go up and like give their own kind of testimony or give like recite a poem or something like that. And again, I was hearing stories after stories of like this tragic trope, and one of them being um, a brother who wasn't even native, but visiting a place in the land of the Mayan, and then like visiting with the people and maybe spending a summer interning or doing some type of project in that thing, and then meeting such beautiful people and everything else. But what he shares as his message from that experience is like just feeling so tragic and feeling so sad that eventually the culture of those people are da 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 da. And it was again like it predicting and like forecasting and advocating essentially for what is being admonished. And it's just like, oh, that inevitability trope. It's so duplicitous and bullshit. With all due respect and peace and blessings to all kinfolk involved, but it's bullshit. And so, anyways, all right. That's what I'm addressing when I talk about the Last of the Mohicans. It's that trope. And so then, as a way of understanding it, in perhaps another type of light, is applying it to Americans, the last of the Americans. So, with peace and love, genuinely, thoroughly, 100 for all Americans. This is a call for all Americans to recognize the self-destructive behavior. Not just that Americans are, but many other folk, but particularly what is observed here. And in order to do that, a lot of it involves piercing through that veil of the psychosis of citizenship amongst Americans. So, the last of the Americans. There are two versions of this. There's the 1,000 year version of it, and there is the 1,000 day version of this. But when you recognize the rise and fall of civilizations, ancient Greece, Rome, and additionally, even certain dynasties within China. China has a continuous civilization, but there are dynasties that go up and down. So we see that eventually, at some point, America is going to be a nothingness. At some point, it may happen 1,000 years from now, and it may happen 1,000 days from now. And so this is like a vision, a picture, a motion picture, a version of what this looks like, the last of the Americans. So in the 1,000 year version, there is the motion picture of, let's say, a man walking. I'm gonna mix this in with the rice because it's that greasy. There's the vision, the motion picture of a man walking along the ground, walking along the face of the earth, in the wilderness by himself, maybe muttering or whatever else. And there's wildlife, there are trees. It's not even a dystopian kind of thing. It's just like a wilderness. 1,000 years from now, and in this vision, the narrative that is explained is that the beings who are historically known as humans, by and large, eventually evolve or progress or whatever else to a different state of being, perhaps even actually multiple states of being. But one of the pervasive states of being in this version, 1,000 years from this moment, in this particular version, the vast number of humans progress in a series of developments to being basically just some organic matter, microscopic organic matter that is fused with microscopic circuitry, nanotechnology, presumably, if that's what nano means or something to that effect, nano circuitry, and living as like microscopic entities that zip, 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 zip in the skies with cloud cities and civilizations in the atmosphere, in the clouds, and just like maybe a little semblance of a light here and there, going from city to city, whatever, cloud to cloud, in the atmosphere. That being like the pervasive descendants of human civilization at that point. Now that's not the totality because then humans evolve in other ways as well, but that's like pervasive. And in that process, over 1,000 years, um, the ones who are known as Americans, um, eventually the majority, let's say that. So that's what the majority of Americans, let's say, the majority of Americans, at some point in the process of 1,000 years, let go of the notion of nationalism, and those constructs. And additionally, it was too confining for the technology. It was too confining for the social um, communication and cooperation. And additionally, so we're just like, yeah, nah, we got to focus on this. So that's what it is. And then from doing that, things just progress even further to the point where, again, evolving into just these microscopic organic matter fused with nano microscopic technology, cities in the skies that are tiny, tiny, tiny cloud, and then just maybe a little bit of a light spark to just show where things are going, or whatever, for those who have eyes to see. Um, and those who did not make that decision to let go of nationalism, to stay American, like stayed on the ground, and just kind of fended with whatever happened. And the thing is, like in this scenario, 1,000 years from now, it's not a dystopia. Like it's green, fertile ground because the nature of the evolution is increasingly harmonious with the elements. I mean, most of the elements that are consumed in this scenario is light and water and moisture. So, but at the same time, there's a recognized necessity of symbiosis between the natural environment of the surface of the Earth and the atmosphere, where the gases and other elements that are necessary for the circuitry and additionally are gleaned. So otherwise, like the surface of the Earth is green, it's pristine, it's healthy, but it's just so many people from America actually living because most went into the clouds. So the and in doing that, let go of the notion, just let go of being American, let go of the national constructs and everything. So they let go of being American a long time ago, and the ones who held on to being American and nationalistic and this is who we are, after 1,000 years, there were just so many few, just to the point of just being one, and that one just like fending as like a caveman or whatever in the wilderness, not necessarily like like a Neanderthal or anything, but just like living a very um, what would be considered a primitive existence in terms of just like relationship with nature and additionally, but still like identifying as an American of just like these are who my forebears are. It become like a essentially a tribalism at that point, just because that's what's left, and the person has less of a knowledge about anything else about the person's ancestry or whatever else, and so the person just identifies as American, and that is the last of the Americans. So that's the 1,000 years scenario. That's the 1,000 year version. Then there's the 1,000 day version. In the 1,000 day version, um, in this scenario, basically, again, America gets basically scapegoated because what is recognized, the world kind of, kind of, the world wakes up effectively to the collective self-destruction being done around the world. Again, looking at driving and predatory methodologies of agriculture and additionally, and so and it's being done all over the world. The United States is not exclusive to it, but what is recognized is that how big a part of the violation that United States plays, and its influence in the behavior being done in other places around the world. And so basically, like I said, the United States particularly gets scapegoated, but pretty much the whole Western Hemisphere gets scapegoated in this persecution from the world. And so basically, not just the United States, but around the Western Hemisphere, all the Americas, there's an ultimatum that the world places upon the Western Hemisphere, and is basically either um, for those who want to stay residing in the geography of the Americas, or what's previously known as the Americas. Anybody who wants to stay, it's those individuals are required to relinquish the claims of nationality and sovereignty as residents at that moment, um, and to agree to organize and continue in by the standards and protocols that the world dictates accordingly in establishing new government administrations and economics and everything else like that. So it's a matter of being proactive in agreeing to that if for those who want to stay. And for those who don't do that, oh, and the other thing also is there's a time frame to do it by a certain period. And in doing that and agreeing to the terms, registering as a cooperative um, participant or cooperating resident um, in order to be able to stay, and then also for a for an intermediate interim for an interim period, um, maybe 6 months or whatever, relocating to these designated areas for cooperating residents whilst there is the transformation process. So um, those who want to stay and continue to be residents and and register, do that, and then move or relocate temporarily to these designated locations um, for the transformation process. And in doing that, um, stop being Americans. Let go of the identity of American citizenship, and additionally, and that goes for again Venezuela and all the nations of the Western Hemisphere that are all immigrant governments. And I'm using that word in a very I'm using that term in a very innocuous, can, very kind way. So that's what's done. Now, for those who don't do that, for those who refuse to let go of the American citizenship or sovereignty or whatever else, and are going want to resist the world and everything else like that, then there's that conflict. And additionally, and then that goes as it goes, and those who go that route eventually are diminished in number, and the remaining few flee into the hills and the remote areas of the hemisphere, and basically kind of camp out and assume very primitive type of lifestyles, but hold on to that notion and identity of being American. Um, there are a number of other options. People can go back to their own homelands, um, and further. So, anyways, but in doing so, again, going back to the homelands, then just being reintegrated into one's own homeland and culture, and additionally. So, the only Americans left are the ones that flee into the hills and live the what is perceived as the primitive lifestyle, um, and fending or in dealing with native kinfolk, and additionally in the same environments. But that's another story. So those are the two scenarios of the last of the Americans. Um, but putting things into perspective. So at this point, the fatigue level is hitting in. Still have some replenishment to do. Ha 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 ha. All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to like dig in now. All right, I'm going to partake of some food before I get into the next topic. Those are the basic considerations at this moment. The next things that I have to share are basically like it delves into the realm of solutions, but it also involves just what we're working on at the moment. Wait, hey. One thing that also can be done with the soybeans is mixing it with rice or some other grains or foods, and give it some crunch, some texture variation. So what the word here is this and that. So, in that pause, there's the consideration of sharing some other background information about the situation in the stipulations. Oh, that's sriracha right there. That bottle was full not long ago. When I talk about me being guilty, me personally, and everybody being guilty in terms of the exploitation and getting the benefits of it and everything else like that, I'm going to share some anecdotes about the measures, the lengths that are done, that are embarked to distance ourselves from that guilt, from the benefits, to live in a fair way, to minimize the harm that we cause others. So, one, I don't have a bank account. I hardly have. I don't. I don't tend to use money at, at all. Continually striving and working and cultivating a system and a methodology and a system of economics and currency that doesn't utilize currency issued by the United States government or by any other conventional government per se. So that's one thing. In terms of deriving benefit and utilizing the trappings of the exploitation. And I ain't perfect. I ain't no better than nobody else. I ain't no worse either. So I'm just communicating what I do personally to distance myself as much as possible from the atrocities that I find myself enveloped amidst. Minimizing, using money as minimally as possible. Now, when it comes to products, being mindful again, obviously, of sweatshop situations, exploitative labor and stuff like that. Through the years, and particularly in the past decade, our collective cultivates a food co-op where we purchase fair trade, organic, vegan, food. It takes a lot of work to find those places that provide that food and to distribute it here. It's not just a vacation type of thing. It's not just a novelty thing. We cultivate it as a full-time thing where we get our sustenance from. Rice, beans, flour, spices, herbs, and additionally, clothing, bath products, and additionally, soaps. We spend years researching who provides that, costs, how it's provided, where it's provided, and additionally, it's not readily available at local stores. It's not readily available in the city or the county here. We have to look to find these places that provide things that are not provided from murder and rape and tears and all that other stuff. We have to go find where we can find those things. It's not easy. A lot of it is from the internet and whatever, and getting it shipped here. And in doing that, even then, it's very expensive because it's not subsidized. It's fair, or it's fairer. So instead of just not paying slave labor, we have to pay for the labor that provides us the food. It's expensive not to exploit. So when we're already dealing with a modest amount for what we need for our own sustenance, we pay the premiums to so that it's fair. I'm being empathetic. In addition to all the time of finding the information and everything else, and then we have to work amongst ourselves to organize and saying how our co-op's going to work, how are we going to share this, what we are going to purchase as a collective, because we don't have the options of just getting whatever we want, like going to the store. It's buying in bulk, in big numbers. So we have to agree that we all want whatever it is we're going to purchase. We're buying pallets, and the pallets are coming in 20, 30 kilo bags. So we got to work on all these mechanics of how that works, and we do that for years. Then when it's starting to get nice, and we're starting to be able to do it in a way that's not so expensive, and start to get things. The first things we got. Rice, beans, flour. As I mentioned before, spices, additional. All of these things purchased beyond bulk. It's wholesale. We work with a distributor. We work with international distributor. We had to make arrangements with a shipper. It's a considerable amount of work. It had to go through approvals and everything else like that from different entities, from the distributor and the shipper. Not just a matter of we have the money, give us the stuff. It's we have to put an application. We have to put a proposal in additionally, and then, but it was working. Now there are additional suppliers that work increasingly in a retail type of manner, but there are pluses and minuses with each scenario. But after about a year or two, as we prepare to not upscale, but increase the amounts and start to build so that it's further amount of the materials we're utilizing and not just portion. As we are making that preparation, a number of the suppliers say, they can't provide the food at this point because their suppliers are no longer providing it to them. And we started getting a lot of these announcements from other entities. And then one of our main lines of supply at that point in this project refused to ship to us, and cited changes in the policy of the U.S. government in terms of customs and what it allows, and concerns that the products being purchased would not be allowed through customs, and thus the shipper refused to ship to us. So it was a whole kind of pass the buck blame shipper, distributor, da 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 da. And even then, we are only working with the distributor because the supplier that is actually providing the food in an ethical way doesn't ship to the United States. It only works through the distributor in international shipping. So after going through all those things, it still got canceled. So we go through the process of doing things as fairly as possible. Amidst what the conditions, severe conditions, cats getting done up in front of us, and additionally, so it's not peaches and cream for in our lives at this moment, and we go through these efforts, and then what was like further deflating is recognizing I'm without a child, I'm without a wife. This is part of the sacrifices that are being made to live in this righteous way. So it's valuable and is worth. I won't say it's worth it, but there's purpose to it. However, when we're going through these sacrifices and discipline to live in such a way so that we can be able to support others to live in such a way in other places around the world who are providing us with these materials, with the sustenance. That's what I'm pointing at. When we're being altruistic, and additionally, we're not being guaranteed that the kinfolk who are in the villages, who are in the fields, and additionally, who are getting that benefit. I gave you food. What you looking at? This is unprecedented. Thank you. There's no guarantee that those kinfolk who are reaping the benefits of that, who have now strengthened villages, who have greater autonomy, are utilizing that and have the same kind of concern for our well-being, and they might use that extra money to like get nice and get drunk or whatever. So that's a little bit excessive, but that's not too much from the concerns, because we don't see the reciprocal in terms of the agreements and the understanding and the cooperation. And what we recognize is that a lot of the facilitators of the fair trade particularly thing, and this is not hate on fair trade, just one of the concerns, literally genuinely through years of toil in participating in this, is that the fair trade thing significantly caters to upper middle income households, middle class, upper class kinfolk who want to have some kind of like alleviation of guilt for the oppression, and so it can get like a nice chocolate bar or this nice little gift package that's provided from a village where people are paid fairly, so that people can say, we support fair trade. It's not intended substantially in the guise of fair trade as the main way for people to receive the vast amount of the products that they consume and rely upon. It's a gift holiday type of thing rather than a full-time lifestyle thing. So we're paying these premiums for this holiday industry, and the people who are the villagers on the other end who are benefiting of it aren't necessarily vacationing themselves, but there's no guarantees about like the discipline that they're living in. I'm not getting drunk. I'm not even smoking herb at all because it's too hectic right now. It's not a priority. So there are a lot of things we're foregoing in order to be able to support kinfolk to live better, and there's no guarantee that they're actually utilizing those benefits in order to live better and then to support us. And it's not even a matter about supporting us, but particularly not getting drunk or not living in a frivolous, self-destructive way. So when we recognize that, we see like how much effort and sacrifice we're putting into this without the explicit expressions of mutuality and reciprocity. And again, it's not a matter of like even soliciting villages to help us in return. It's appropriate, but that's not the purpose of that. It's not a requirement of what we do initially in our endeavor. But when we see all that, and then we get these cancellations and obstructions and embargoes effectively, then we'd be like, serious. We got to solidify the home front. So that's why we still do it. We still do it as much as we can, but in terms of going the extra lengths that we do before, it's a different situation at this point. So when we talk about guilt, and additionally, everybody's guilty. I'm guilty too. But at the same time, we done put in work, and we continue to put in work. So I just say that for people's information, so people can slow up on whatever criticisms or whatever for people's own benefit. Again, I ain't perfect. I ain't invincible. We ain't perfect. We ain't invincible. But we put in a whole lot of work, and so we have certain come. It's not even a matter of credibility, but it's just like it's for cats to know. So there it is, and so that's that. Now, the other thing I'll share is that growing up in this society as a man, as a youngster, as a boy of African ancestry, what we are taught is the affliction, the persecution. We're essentially taught all around how society is against us. Some people might say, well, too bad. Some people might say, oh, too bad. But it's not a question about the system being against us. It's not even that's what it is. Now, at the same time, we're told not to be mad, and not to hate everybody, and to not to be self annihilationist or whatever else. Like, even though like everything is terrible, not to use that as an excuse. And there's legitimacy within that, but at the same time, cats don't know what they're talking about when they say that. And as an adult, um, as a man, maturing into my manhood, there's this continual notion of the society being against a man, the system being against a man, and additionally, it's a heavy, heavy weight. 24/7, 24/7, and at the same time, we're taught we're not supposed to blame everybody who's part of the system for it. We're not to get mad. We're taught that there's supposed to be something beyond all this or whatever, something greater. Some people go to religion, and additionally, as they try to find something, a greater power, a greater realm, beyond just this experience of seemingly the world against oneself. I mean, we can look at tracks like Tupac, Me Against the World. I mean, listen to the hip hop, particularly during that period, 80s, 90s, thereabouts, of just this notion of everyone being against a man. So, all that being said, I grew up with that. We are taught get an education. That's the way to get out of it. Um, find something positive. Invest in that. Da 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 da. And it's not everybody's against you. Not everybody in society. It's tough and it's not fair, but it's not everybody. And again, what's given to us as a solution is education. That's the way out. So, all that being said, my concluding year, or my third year in law school, I get beat down by the police. And then I get charged with a federal felony assaulting a police officer. I did not assault a police officer. I put my hands up to defend myself from the baton beat down that was being put upon me, um, because I didn't drop to the ground quick enough or whatever. So, anyways, I got charged with a federal felony, and salty, mad. I'm not. And on one hand, there's the persecution that we were talking about, for all of my life up to that point, a quarter of a century, doing my best to stay out of trouble, not to get into fights, this and the other. I'm not perfect, don't have a clean record in that respect, but like, I'm in law school at that point. I'm playing. I won't say play the role, but I'm being responsible and proactive, and additionally, so I'm playing. I am walking the line of society and convention. I'm in law school. So I got beat down by the police. And it wasn't even, oh, our bad, our bad. It was like doubling. I'm like, no, let's get this fool. Because he thinks he's somebody. He might try to do something otherwise. I could see, oh, this is the world right now. Cats is playing for keeps. It's not just hyperbole. All this talk about persecution and oppression and black men, this and the other. Welcome. Here it is. And that awakening and that introduction is culminated when I see the court case on paper, when my defense attorney shows me the criminal court case. There it was in black and white. The United States of America versus Peter. In plain English, black and white, on paper, officially, official, United States of America versus Peter. When I saw that on paper, I was just like, wow. This whole time I've been working in the system. I've already known for over a decade. Yeah, for over a decade. I already know about the U.S. Constitution. And I've been listening to you saying that it's not actually how we are and this and the other. And I've been working as much as I can to be a productive member of society and leader and uplifting and everything else like that. But there it is, black and white. U.S., United States of America versus Peter. So when kinfolk talk about it's not all of society versus you, it was right there in black and white. Citizen. The entirety of the United States and all its citizens, whether they like it or not, versus Peter. I'm not against y'all. Y'all coming at me at that moment. And it is a wake up call in terms of it is every citizen. Every citizen. It was a federal case against me. Every citizen. My family and myself. I was a citizen at that point. And that was I had to come to terms with that, and that's what also precipitates me letting go of citizenship. But that's the nature of citizenship. Everybody who does anything in the name of the government is doing it under the leadership of each citizen. That's not just ideology. That's actuality. That's the politics. So, and that's the responsibility. So every citizen, whether you like it or not, that's if you don't like it, let go of the citizenship. You have a choice. As unfortunate as it may be, but you got to own up to it for your own benefit, for your own sake. Because when the government is behaving self-destructively, when the government is being utilized by other entities in a self-destructive way, you have a choice. So, and you have a responsibility. So when I talk about what happens to me at the library 20 years ago, and the librarians call the police, and the police call the pharmaceuticals. It's the city of Cleveland Heights. It's every citizen of the city of Cleveland Heights that is making that decision and that's responsible. When I leave the United States for political asylum in Denmark, and I am forcefully deported back to the United States, every citizen of the United States is responsible for that. That's not me in my. That's not a psychotic notion of paranoia or anything. That's the democratic system. And so when I see all kinfolk who are presumably walking the street and additionally talking kinfolk, loved ones who are presumably U.S. citizens, boom, that's who did it. And it's not hate. I'm not hating anybody. I don't hate anybody. But it's a matter of recognizing that you did that to me. You brought me back here. You deported me, forcefully, illegally deported me back here. Every citizen of the United States did that. That's not hyperbole. That's not paranoia. That's facts. And I say that because that's part of the psychosis of citizenship. Because citizens don't want to acknowledge that. Citizens don't want to acknowledge everything that the United States government does, and citizens don't want to take responsibility for that, and instead want to play this facade of congeniality and pretend and avoidance. And it works for a certain period until the self-destructive behavior becomes too much. But oftentimes, kinfolk who are enveloped in that kind of culture have difficulty recognizing the self-destructive behavior and the excessiveness of the self-destructive behavior, because kinfolk are so enveloped in the pretenses and the fake and the facades of congeniality. And so that's where the concerns are, because I have a responsibility of how much I entertain the facades, because I know kinfolk aren't aware, and kinfolk don't want to be aware of like everything, but that's actuality. How I put this: the things that are done to me historically, all the way through whenever, by the United States government, are done by the U.S. citizens. And so when I interact with kinfolk most confidently are not necessarily aware of everything that's been done, and thus can't like accept responsibility for it. But at the same time, having a conversation aside from that, it's very difficult because it's hiding and avoiding like a priority thing that's done and that's being done. And so that's what when one starts and continues in a conversation with kinfolk without addressing that, one is enveloped in the psychosis of that citizen, by not addressing like a priority thing. Like if somebody just got beat down by the police, um, and then got released, and then there's like on papers or whatever, like the trial is pending or whatever, and then that like they go to the coffee house or whatever and have like a conversation with people, and don't talk about that, and don't talk about how the people are responsible for that because they're the citizens. And the person doesn't want to bring that up, not just because the person doesn't want to be like stigmatized or whatever else, but just because the person doesn't want to be accusatory, or doesn't want the people to take offense of, or doesn't want to like disavail people of their like the pretenses of innocence or whatever from being responsible for what happened to that person. Um, that person doesn't want people to feel uncomfortable, but by entertaining that avoidance of not talking about it and not like holding the people accountable, like, yo, that's your police that did that, it's your fault, da 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 da, in a certain sense. Ultimately, again, it's a matter of taking blame, but instead of addressing the conditions and the cause and effect and the responsibility that's involved in it, and simply just like having an ordinary conversation, that person is immersing that person's self within the psychosis of avoidance, the psychosis of that citizen, of those citizens, and that and of citizenship. And it's very difficult to avoid doing that, but at the same time, we also have to accept culpability and responsibility for doing that, for allowing that, for allowing the citizens to continue in that psychosis, particularly when it escalates to the point of being excessively self-destructive. Then we have responsibility for that, being like, we should have called y'all out before that, before we let y'all get to this point. Now, the question is how to do that constructively, because one of the natural reactions is just to deny the person, to call them a heretic, to call them crazy, to call them ignorant, to call them mad, to call them uninformed, to call them unfortunate, and all those other things, to dismiss the actuality, and continue avoiding the actuality. So it's not just a matter of venting and getting it off the chest or whatever, but it's like how we do it in a constructive, purposeful way. So, 2 hours, fantastic, into the joint. So there's something else here. Citizens. So, all right. Now we get into the other things about solutions, or at least what we're working on this side. For a long time, well, all right. I'm just going to delve into this part of it. So, Cleveland, Ohio Coalition Consultation. This is a consultation for kinfolk here in the Cleveland area of Ohio, particularly kinfolk of African ancestry from different neighborhoods and different groups. This is part of an ongoing conversation about community building, and it involves topics of sovereignty, village, economic cooperation, and further. So, this is the next iteration of consultation. Like I said, this is something ongoing. So this is just like the next one. It is specific. Some might perceive it as controversial. Some people might perceive it as revolutionary or militant, hostile or otherwise, aggressive. It's very logical. It's very legitimate. It's very necessary. All right. I'm reminded of something else that I was supposed to share about Public Square, and I'll just put that in the ether. So if I remember, God willing, later, I'll just share that accordingly. So this particular consultation about Cleveland, Ohio Coalition. This is a specific recommendation, a humble suggestion to kinfolk here in the Cleveland area of Ohio, of African ancestry particularly, based upon continuing conversation and consultations. But what is communicated here is also applicable to all types of groups. Interesting. I didn't see that was so visible before. Maybe it was like this. Maybe that's why. Or whatever. All right. Anyways, excuse me. Excuse me. Here is the consultation. again, like I said, it's applicable to many different types of groups, in many different locations. It is a paradigm. It is a methodology that is applicable by many different groups. So here it is. For kinfolk in the Cleveland area of Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio Coalition. The first recommendation is establishing a coalition um, with the respective constituencies of the different groups of people of African ancestry in the Cuyahoga area, including Glenville, Kinsman, Lee Harvard, um, Larchmere, EC, um, Huff, the Heights, Shaker, and additionally, just to name a few, including groups like Little Africa, um, as well as HBCU alumni, um, the Black Greeks, and professional organizations. Um, so, with that collective of constituencies, each constituency identifying representatives, and those representatives from all the constituencies living together as village, literally, physically, acquiring the buildings to accommodate all the representatives. Each constituency having its own area, its own space within whatever buildings are acquired in that process. Um, but living together as a physical village, all the different constituencies, and the representatives maintaining the relationships and involvement with each's own constituency, but just living, residing, and representing its constituency amongst the village, the coalition village. So that's the first joint, and the recommended municipality here is EC for that village. And the methodology of acquiring the buildings, and by acquiring, I'm talking about stewardship, as optimally conventional as possible, working with the system as much as possible for that acquisition of stewardship. Uh, so then the next step is uh, establishing that village, um, and we use the term the hard hitting brothers being provided with sledgehammers to do the necessary um, demolition of abandoned buildings, renovations, adjustments in terms of the roads and anything else like that. Just doing whatever the physical and construction labor is necessary. Doing that in house, doing that autonomously, just very rudimentarily, and those brethren being one part of the residents of the coalition village. So um, that's the process of establishing the village as village. Now, the further um, methodology, further elements of this methodology include um, establishing a coalition government. So, identifying the shared ethics of the coalition, the shared agreement of decision making as a coalition, and the long term and ongoing intentionality of coalition is establishing itself as the official government of the municipality, the entire municipality itself. So, in this particular scenario, that involves um, working optimally with the established elders of EC and the established leadership of EC, community leadership, and coordinating the eventual establishment of the coalition village government as the official government of EC. So, again, as optimally conventional as possible. Um, One scenario, the way that looks is the village continuing to grow in terms of population and people migrating into EC in order to, and this is for registered. These are for citizens of the United States and citizens of the area, and there's a hesitancy in providing this because we are not citizens, so we can't offer this as a first-hand experience of this is what we've done, because we've chosen another path. We've been solicited to provide advice to those who don't choose this path. So we're providing counsel along those lines. So whatever accusations of duplicity or whatever else, this is direct response to direct solicitations for this advice. So this is what we're sharing accordingly. And I've been using my left hand and describing it. This is what we're sharing accordingly. I've been touching my heart with my left hand too. So this is what we are humbly offering as consultation based upon the direct solicitation that we receive, and we share this with genuine benevolence and well-being for all kinfolk. So in that process of establishing the coalition village government as the official government of the municipality, doing it as optimally conventional as possible, and that involves the village growing in numbers, not just in terms of the immediate village, but also people who are involved and supportive of the cause, moving and being registered as citizens within that municipality. And then when there's the occasion of having the voter, and again, coordinating this as much as possible with the standing mechanisms of government, but one way or another, when the official mechanisms of voting and policy occur, then this actuality of the coalition village government being established as the official government of the municipality being infused within that process as optimally as possible. So there's that. Again, getting numbers, that's the conventional way. Getting the numbers registered in that particular municipality. And then it's not even a matter of campaigning or whatever else, because everybody who's part of the cause is already on board. And it's just a matter of, okay, whenever this next election thing, there it is. So, amidst the official status of the coalition government, then it's a matter of implementing the policies that are optimally healthy for the municipality and the village itself, the coalition village. Some of those things involve outlawing alcohol across the board, outlawing guns for all residents, renovating the transportation grid so that it's easier to police and account for the safety of residents amidst comparatively restricted access to vehicular transportation that lends itself to other types of vulnerabilities to invasions and violence, and additionally, so constructing and renovating the actual municipality, the transportation grid, and additionally to be further favorable and healthy for the residents and the community within the coalition village and for the entirety of the municipality. Those are some of the things. Some of the general like guidance for the entire venture is twofold: family and reforestation. So the emphasis of the integrity and the well-being of family, traditional family, and also reforestation, cultivating a healthy relationship with nature, the plants, reforesting the municipality thoroughly, recognizing the importance of the forest experience and the nature experience with the health of the residents, cleaning the water, and further. So that being those two themes, and that being something that resonates naturally amongst Afrocentric kinfolk, but and also something that is resonates um, significantly within the ethos of surrounding communities as well, wherein surrounding communities can further immediately recognize the legitimacy of such governance, because there's the recognition of the necessity of those experiences and how those experiences are being obstructed and uh, harmed at this moment. So that is the initial portion, and again with the in the establishment, everything happens according to the grace of the Most High Elohim. So this is a consultation. This is advice. This is other than a prophecy. This is other than a command of saying to do this per se. This is a suggestion, a humble suggestion, and it's for kinfolk to assume the leadership and accept the leadership themselves, and heeding um, whatever advice is shared here accordingly. So. Um, with the establishment of the coalition village government as the official government of the municipality, then, like I said, it's a matter of the renovating the infrastructure of the municipality to be optimally conducive to the well-being of residents in terms of, as I mentioned before, the roads, vehicular transportation, additionally in terms of access and security, and additionally, it involves establishing legislation, city legislation, where buildings that are abandoned for a long time, buildings that are dilapidated for a long time, are confiscated into the holdings of the municipality, and the municipality having the prerogative of determining what happens with those buildings. So again, it's taking the responsibility for the uh, for the infrastructure, and positioning the municipality government to make effective and necessary and priority decisions concerning the infrastructure, the residences, educational facilities, and additionally within the municipality, based upon the status of the buildings and further. So that's one thing. Again, it's just very logical. It's very common sense. It's very difficult for any entity, any genuine entity outside of the municipality, who's observing it and has concerns about it, to argue against that. When you look at what's going on at the moment, anybody who argues against that is showing themselves as villainous. So, anyways, there's that. In addition to the confiscation of abandoned and dilapidated um, edifices within the municipality, it's also a matter of the municipality working directly with other entities in the international community in terms of investment partnerships, and additionally for projects and ventures economics within the municipality. And there's countless institutions and entities and further that have an interest in such cooperation for many different reasons, and many different positive, mutually respectful, and mutually beneficial reasons. So, at the municipality status, um, there is the accessibility for such negotiations and arrangements and contracts that pertains to education, schools, that pertains to health, that pertains to economics and jobs in the long term, that pertains to um, infrastructure construction, that pertains to communications systems, internet access, mobile phone access, and additionally, um, even things that other municipalities aren't doing because other municipalities don't need to do, because their residents do those things for themselves, because most of the residents have the economic means to do that. Doesn't mean that municipalities can't do that. Municipalities can do that. So Um, but it's a matter of having that status to have the interaction with certain types of international agencies. So that's the ongoing long-term involvement. And amidst the establishment of the coalition village government as the municipality government, each constituency in those geographies that I mentioned have the prerogative of how much each one migrates to the actual vicinity, or cultivates partnerships and similar building and or similar um, works within one's own immediate location. So that's something else. Okay, so that's much of it. One thing I'll say at the moment, to give it some, to give it some um, tangibility. I identify two prominent stages in this process. The first stage is the establishment of the village, again, through optimally conventional means. And with residents of the coalition residing, members of the coalition residing in the village and living as a village together. Whatever the village looks like, however um, situated the buildings are, and additionally residing there physically, having physical presence, physical interaction, cooperation with each other, um, and that's the first stage. The second stage is establishing the municipality, the official coalition village government as the municipality government. That's the second stage of this process. Now, what I see, what I share, what I humbly suggest is the first stage being completed in the first summer. Plain and simple. And then the second stage being completed in the second summer. Plain and simple. That might sound like a quick turnaround. It's very plausible. It's very accessible. It's very appropriate. Um, it's necessary, and it's legitimate. Letting go of the delays. This is done by one's own self. This is done by the community's own self. So it's when CAS is serious enough to do something serious and genuine, here it is. Boom, do it. And also to be mindful of the seasons, to be mindful of the climate, recognizing just be honest. These facts. CAS is further motivated and available to do things when the weather is warmer, and that factors into the elements of competition and obstruction and everything else. So, as the weather gets warm, all right, here's the move. Let's get it done. The first summer, establishing the village. Recognize, okay, so that's only so much can be done with established. Even if it's established early summer, get it thorough, get it solid, and prepare for the winter. Prepare for it to be solid through the winter, and then in that second summer, amidst all the negotiations and preparations and everything else like that, with kinfolk being registered and getting the next moves coordinated and everything else like that, by the time the second summer comes through, establish the municipal government. Done deal. Now that might sound again like, yo, so you were just talking about whole an entire municipality? All of these things take time and everything. No, 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 no. The next summer, at the latest. And I can't speak from experience. I can't speak from firsthand doing it. I'm not a citizen. I'm out of society. But what I can say is that no, when things need to get done in convention, things get done. things get fast tracked, and you can see the examples of that shutdowns. And additionally, it's not a process. It's not, well, let's wait till next year's elections. No, it gets done. This is it at that level. Get it done. The next summer, by the next summer. And then from there it is. Now it's established. Now it's a matter of just continuing to do the work. There it is. And speaking from the perspective of the world, that includes all the conspiracies and everything else like that, all the different levels, high and low, distant and near. There are three kind of general kind of reactions that that convention has to what it refers to as development, but to these types of city initiatives. One response is to obstruct it, to just put it down as much as possible. That's one reaction. General reaction. There are a lot of different reactions, but general reaction, particularly in this sense, that's one. Another reaction is to cooperate with it, but cooperate with it in a slow, kind of patient, eventual kind of sense. Like, we're on board. We're committed to this. We just want to make sure it gets done in a responsible and thorough way. We just want to make sure all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed and everything. That's the second kind of thing. Then the third scenario in this sense is what I just mentioned before, fast track. Oh, there's warfare in Ukraine. We need to make all these policies for incoming refugees. Fast track. Oh, there's this disease coming through and we need to like change what people are doing or whatever. Fast track. Convention has that propensity to set the rules aside and fast track. So this is a fast track type of situation. And to acknowledge that, to recognize the legitimacy within this, legitimacy within the cause, the legitimacy within your health and well-being, the legitimacy within your distancing from self-destruction. It is legit. And warrants being fast-tracked. So, it's not just a matter of there being cooperation, and it's not just a matter of like politicians or pillars of society, philanthropists, industry, corporate titans agreeing and saying, yes, we're invested in this long-term project. We have a 10-year implementation methodology. No, that's not even enough at this moment. Fast track. First summer village, second summer government. Fast track. Anything less is unacceptable, is intolerant, is unacceptable. And that's it. And this is not, we are not advocating violence. We're not threatening violence. We're not suggesting that at all. There are other ways of getting things done that are further effective than that. But it might sound very militant about those words I just mentioned. It's actually extremely healthy. It's extremely cooperative with the larger world system. And with the conditions of well-being here in the Cuyahoga area. So it may sound authoritative. It is. And if it sounds authoritative by somebody who's perceived as not being part of the authority, that might seem as militant. That's the perceiver's own illusion. So anyways, fast track. Anything less is unacceptable. Now, here's the thing. This is a tactical advice. If there is any semblance any hint, not even of just obstruction, if there's anything hint, if there's any hint of anything less than fast track, here's an adjustment. Instead of looking at EC, look at Heights. Look at Cleveland Heights and just do it in Cleveland Heights. Go to Cleveland Heights. And we're not going to we don't advise, we're not going to provide advice of how to do it at that point. We've already set the ground, the blueprint there. So that speaks for itself. That's solid wherever it's done. But how it's done in Cleveland Heights. Cleveland Heights is a larger municipality. There's further resistance in terms of conventionality. That's one reason why we were saying from saying Cleveland Heights outright at the beginning. So in EC we see much further conditions that are much further conducive and receptive to such an endeavor as we are humbly suggesting here. But even amidst anything less than it being fast tracked in EC, then just focusing on Cleveland Heights as the location, and establishing Cleveland Heights as the government of the coalition village. Now that involves that there's an anticipation of further contention in that scenario. However, there's strong reason for that scenario, even compared to the first scenario, because, well, I'll just say further implications in that how that plays out. So again, doing it and in terms of the details, that's something for the leadership of the coalition to determine as it unfolds. What we do see is, I mean, pretty much Cleveland Heights has been claimed by the LGBTQ community, pretty much. Cleveland Heights is ethnically diverse. There's a considerable amount of socioeconomic variance that is just part of the culture of Cleveland Heights, that has its own resistances to different for new things, and it has a well, anyways, that's some of the culture in Cleveland Heights. That being said, it is pretty much the LGBTQ community has taken over Cleveland Heights, particularly the public side of it. And anyways, so in the second scenario of what I articulated just a minute ago, one of the logics and the legitimacies of the second scenario, even further than the what's described in the first scenario, is that in that second scenario, establishing Cleveland Heights as the coalition, I should say, rephrase it, establishing the coalition village government as the government of Cleveland Heights, the municipality, and moving the LGBTQ scene to EC. And therein, EC can utilize, or the LGBT community can look at the renovation process as an art project. And that might sound condescending, disrespectful, but that's essential because, or that's the essence of it, because what is involved in this scenario in terms of the Cleveland, Ohio coalition, what I articulate, kinfolk of predominantly of African ancestry, it is increasingly natural. It is increasingly those themes of family and reforestation are further proximate and involved within the experience of the Cleveland, Ohio coalition that I describe here than it is within the LGBT community. And the municipality of Cleveland Heights, generally speaking, has further green space and forestation. So the conditions are further proximate with the culture of the Cleveland, Ohio coalition as described here, compared to the culture of the LGBTQ. The culture of the LGBTQ is increasingly proximate to the conditions that exist within EC in terms of the natural experience. So there's very strong reason and legitimacy in the Cleveland, Ohio coalition residing within the Cleveland Heights and LGBTQ being moved to EC. We articulate that as a response to anything less than the first scenario being fast tracked. So, anyways, there it is. It's articulated. Now, one thing to say amidst all of this is that the most paramount thing in this venture is ethics, is a discipline, is a code of ethics that is shared by the coalition. That's the most essential thing throughout the entirety and continuing generation after generation. The code of ethics of how to behave, how to live, how everybody in the coalition, from the bottom to the top of the leadership and everybody, what is expected? What is the code of behavior, the code of ethics for everybody? Because that is what guides, that is what protects, that is what serves the coalition. So it's important for the coalition to identify that, and then to honor that. So I think that's much of what I have to share on that. The second topic, I said public square. Okay. So, I might have mentioned some of this before in a previous joint. But I'll say something, and I would like to say some new stuff as well. But I was recently at Public Square here in Cleveland, Ohio. Public Square is the city center. It's the epicenter of the city center. Historic, it's where gatherings are conducted, and additionally, it's where the tallest buildings in the county are located at this moment. And it is a center of, historically, it's a center of commerce, business. It is City Hall is located nearby. The courts are nearby. Federal courts, federal buildings, offices, the Federal Reserve, public library, all within the vicinity. "30 years ago, when I was in undergrad, I worked at Public Square for 4 years. I know it rather keenly from that experience 30 years ago. I know what Public Square, now this is during the 90s. During that period, Cleveland was going through an experience of economic upturn. There's a lot of activity in downtown. It's called downtown. Public Square and the area around. There's a lot of hype. It was initially called Society Tower, now known as Key Tower, I presume. Key Tower was just constructed, and I worked for Key Bank, previously Society Bank. So I was there, and I know what it's like. I know what it's like when the city is hustling and bustling. I know what it's like to be there at rush hour at 8 a.m., the early rush hour, and people moving to their offices. So I know what that experience is like. I know what it's like in the middle of the day when there's a lull. I know when it's like at 2-3 p.m. Even when it's like in the next hour or two, it's going to be hustle and bustle. I know what it's like when it quiets down. I know who's around at that point, who it is that's who's in the public square. It's often tourists, it's kinfolk who are from the city, who are just like vibing out at that moment or whatever else. Their concession stands. But that's the scene. But then the next hour or two, rush hour hits, boom, Everybody's moving. Buses are moving. People are moving. Traffic, getting onto the bus, getting onto the rapids, getting onto the cars. Um, and additionally, I know what that looks like. I know the energy of it. I know the feeling of it. Even after 30 years, I know it. Because when I would visit afterwards later on, it would be like, I know what it's like after it slows up a little bit, years later, as the economic activity decreases. And additionally, still it's there, but it's just a little bit less. I know what it's like on East 9th Street, in the differentiation with law firms and banking institutions. And additionally, I know the ebbs and flows of how certain areas of downtown get further hype or whatever over the years, but still there's still the activity here and there, around. Now it's been a minute since I've been to downtown, since I've been in Public Square, particularly during the day, and particularly during rush hour. But I was there this past week on a weekday during rush hour. And when I arrived there, the scene is very different. And it's trippy. I'm staying from using very strong charged words, but it's very trippy. First thing is that at Tower City, I know this for a while. It's been like this for a while. I know what the Tower City is like through the years, when it's been rather quiet, to say it in a kind way. And I'm not an advocate of like big commercialism or whatever else, but I know what Tower City is like when it is very active. When I go there this past week, it's not even a matter of it being non-active. It's like it's a matter of it being active, and that everybody expects it to be not active. The way it's set up is like, this is how it is, and this is how it essentially at this point is intended to be. There are some stores there. There are some stores there that look like kind of affluent. Now, back in the day when the Tower City is first constructed, like the most high end retailers are at Tower City. Things like the most affluent mall, at least on the east side, for years and years and years and years, was Beechwood Mall, before Legacy Village and everything else like that. So the high-end retailers in the Cuyahoga area, the entirety of the Cuyahoga area, would be at Beechwood Mall. One of those being like Saks Fifth Avenue, and then other like Nordstrom's, I think, eventually moved there. But anyways, that was before Tower City was established. When Tower City was initially constructed, there were retailers there that were not even at Beechwood or otherwise. Now, I'm unprivy to all the ins and outs of the high-end retailers or whatever, particularly like 30 years ago, but definitely now. But so there might have been further high-end retailers on the west side or whatever, like Bay Village or Westlake or whatever. I don't frequent those malls during those periods, and I have less occasion of doing so now, so I have less first-hand experience. But anyways, the point is, back in those days, Tower City, that's where the big stores were happening, and like shishi kind of thing, and there were like 5 levels. So the storefronts were very shishi. There were inexpensive things like Gap or whatever else, Eddie Bauer, I think, or Structure, I think was one of the joints. But everything was expensive. Everything was full. Everything was like the high end rich type stuff, or at least for the Cuyahoga area. Now, when I walked through there today, even when it was like starting to go dull, and shops were moving on and everything, there was still activity. There were still stores open. Like there were lower income stores that started to move in. That was a telltale sign. I probably imagine the food court is. I don't even know if the food court is active at this point, but I imagine probably not. Or at least not in earnest. I don't even know if the movie theater is still open. To be honest, I didn't even check it out. But what I can say from my visit this past week is when I went from the rapid station to the service level to Public Square, I could see it's not even a matter of the shops being closed. Like the center is renovated so that, I mean, I'm aware it's a casino, and that's a whole nother thing right there. Um, but like all the windows are like it's all artwork on all the windows, so it's all closed up, but it's all artwork, and it advertises the casino by and large. There's some stores that are open, and how what those stores are doing, I'm uncertain because they look like they were full and like they were selling like expensive stuff, but I'm just like, wait, what? Um, and I mean, obviously, things can be subsidized, and things can just be there for fronts or whatever else, but. Uh, there were a few stores where by and large it was like everything, it wasn't even like boarded up, it was just like it was artworked up, and then there were signs of the casino. I didn't see an entrance for the casino. I didn't see um, I saw no like activity in terms of people walking to, perhaps there's like a specific entrance, and anybody who's going to the casino just goes to the entrance and doesn't mess around with walking along the walkways or whatever. um, but anyways, it was quiet. There's hardly anybody there, and it had an energy like there's hardly anybody ever there. And there were no storefront windows and everything. Everything was artworked up so that it was it was just like it was the energy was just, I don't want to use the word dead, but it was along those lines. And but it was extremely, it was like on life support kind of thing, and that's somewhat of a pejorative thing. I have to be very mindful because there's dear kinfolk who are dealing with that situation. I don't mean to make light of that, um, but it was very low. The energy level was very low, particularly from my frame of reference. So then I get into public square. Then there are people around there and everything else. But even then, like public square is very quiet. And I look and I see that it's renovated. And I know, like for the Republican convention 4 years ago, there was like all these reconstruction or whatever. So it's been a while since I've been there since then. So I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. They did this, okay. And so as I'm looking at that, again, it's trippy because again, it's very quiet. There are people moving. There are buses that are going around. But the scene is like very much the local scene, and it's kind of like what it looks like during the kind of sort of when I would be there during like the lull hours of the afternoon or whatever, when it's kind of like the local kind of scene. But even then, like the energy was just very low. There are few people there, um, and like the public square itself. Initially, it had 4 quadrants to it, 4 blocks, um, and the first block, it was like a city park type of thing. There was a memorial, there was gathering places, and additionally, a public square. What I observed, there are two main things that I remember. Um, the first thing I observed is there was a restaurant in the middle of public square, like a private restaurant in the public space, and there was a patio kind of area for the restaurant that was cordoned off with lots of signs that said customers only, customers only, customers only, customers only on public square. All right, and then the other thing I saw was like a building being constructed, like a maybe 20, 30 story building, a kind of new modern kind of glass um, tower, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, there's hardly any activity here, but here's this building being constructed, like things are bustling and like everything's new, and it was just again, it was a very binary dichotomy. I won't. I'll try to not to utilize the word here, but anyways, that's what it was. Now, as I continue on walking through public square, because I'm walking to the bus stop where I'm connecting. That's my purpose for being there. Um, and I see like there's a crosswalk, but the crosswalk there's like a parkway curve like that through the crosswalk, and it's going through a street, and I'm used to that street, cars going back and forth. And so as I'm looking, there's a light there, the crosswalk, and this and that. But like, who makes a creative park? It was a huge like space of the crosswalk, like maybe 15, 20 meters, like a huge curved crosswalk. Like that's something for like a green space where there's no traffic, there's no thing for somebody getting hit. That's when you do the RD, let's go on a venture off the beaten track kind of thing for no reason kind of stuff, just to walk. Not when you're crossing a city street. So that's how I'm just looking at it, and there's a crosswalk sign saying crosswalk, and there's a light there. And I'm like, yo, what are you telling people to do in that scenario? Um, and then as I observe further, I'm like, oh wait, hold up, the streets are cordoned off. Like if there's a block on the one side of public square and there's a block on the other side of public square, so there's no traffic going back and forth. And so I'm like, okay, well, at least now I'm less concerned about people actually getting hurt from whatever that was. But then I'm like, yo, what's this crosswalk thing about then? What's going on? And even if that's like something like um, after effect, like the crosswalk was there before it would block it off or whatever, then what's the whole curvature thing? What is going on here? And the whole space, like it's all like concrete. It's all like gray. I don't remember seeing very much trees or anything else like that. But it's like it looked like a skating park, a skate park. Um, and so I'm just like, wow. And I mean, I'm not there to sightsee or tour or whatever. I'm there to catch the bus. So I'm like, yo, let me find out where this bus is at. But as I'm going to my bus and as I'm sitting there waiting for the bus, I'm just like peeping what's going on, and I can see like the whole thing. It's rush hour at that moment. It's literally 5 p.m. and ain't nobody, and I'm looking at the building being constructed. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Bus is going back and forth, but that's pretty much it. Um, one kinfolk, or number of kinfolk walking in the middle of the street, and it not even being a thing. It's like, okay, cool. What's going on? What's happening? What's up? All right. What's happening in this vicinity? And so that's one thing, and that's trippy, and that's not meant to be negative or um, to be disrespectful or derogatory to anybody. But it's like a genuine concern because that is the effective seat of the city. That is the hub of the experience, the identity of the city and all the surrounding municipalities, the county and beyond the county. And so, if this is what is being evidenced in the seat, what's going on all around? Um, then I'm gonna go further into this joint. 3 hours, plenty of storage, no problems. Going further into this joint, I look at the buildings, and there are large buildings. I guess it's called Huntington or something like this at this point. It used to be called, for the most part, it's called the BP building for many years, but even before that, it's called Sohio or Standard Oil. The legacy of John D. Rockefeller. There's Terminal Tower. There's Key Corp, Key Bank. There are a lot of big buildings in the immediate vicinity. And each one looks empty at rush hour, regular weekday. And I'm thinking, what's going on in these buildings at this moment? Like, what's happening in these buildings? Are they being utilized? Are they empty? It feels like a ghost town, or almost a ghost town, because there are people around. Then what that causes is to think about what those buildings look like at night, what those buildings feel like at night, even when things are like hustling and bustling. What corporate skyscrapers feel like at night, literally, like with a security guard walking through dark corridors or whatever. I presume there's probably light activated or motion activated lights just to save on whatever. But even when, whatever it is, when it's empty and ain't nothing happening there in the dark, in the night hours, what's the energy? What's the vibration? What's the spirit in those places? And how is that affecting the psyche of the people during the day? How is that affecting the psyche of the people who are receiving the services or receiving the consequences, the aggressions of whatever is being planned and coordinated within those buildings. What is the spirit in those buildings? What are the dreams? What are the nightmares that are being experienced amidst those buildings? That sounds like crazy talk. It sounds like spacey, spacehead talk, whatever. But that's serious because I know how important in these days of inception and internet and cipher and cyber cipher. I know how important the dream world is, how influential the dream world is, how scary the dream world is, and how beautiful the dream world is. How some people are petrified at the thought of going to sleep, and how some people live only to go to sleep. I have an idea of what both of those experiences are because I've experienced both of those situations of just having horrendous nightmares. And by nightmares, I'm not talking about just like very unpleasant. I'm talking about things that seem like actual life, and not even things that seem like things that are actual life, beyond our volition. That's happening and affecting not just ourselves but our loved ones, and additionally, in the dream world, entities, beings, other people visiting intentionally, being mindful, and influencing the experiences in the dreaming. It's scary stuff. We can talk about aliens and insects and all these other types of experiences, and demons and angels and everything else, particularly in the dream, and how scary that is. And I also know how beautiful the dreaming is. I know what the paradise feels like. I know what the paradise is. I know what the peace is. I know what the rejuvenation is as well. I know what the pains are when being locked up and tortured and thinking the only place I have to escape this is in my dreams, and then dreaming about being locked up and tortured, and then waking up and saying, oh, locked up and tortured. Nasty. So I know many of the different lives. I know what it's like. We have dreams all through life. And I'm not going to start talking about my dream experiences, but at this moment, I'll rephrase that. I intend to avoid talking about all my dreaming experiences at this moment. The point is, I know how powerful the dream experience is. I know some of the elements that influence that experience. And I know the type of influences that the corporate experience has in the dream experience. Which leads to consider what is going on in the buildings at this moment. What is going on in those buildings in the daytime when things seem to be abandoned, and what is going on in the nighttime. I think of how huge those buildings are, how much space those hallways and rooms and corridors are. I think of what can be done in all those spaces, out of public view, with the payoffs of a few security guards or whatever, away from surveillance. The atrocities, the unspoken things, the indulgences. I know what people. I know what people's potentialities are. I know what my personal experience is. I know the energies and the vibrations that result from the indulgences and from the atrocities, and that infuse within the spaces and affect the psyches continually ongoing, to the point where people have to render those places targets for demolition because it becomes too much. Anyways, all that being said, quasi point, or the semi point here, is there's a need for healing. When I look at the lack of vitality in the public square, it's not even a matter of just like a hustle and bustle, like I said, of commercialization or whatever, but just recognizing this is the center of the city. There's a recognition of vitality. So one of the solutions that is considered is consultation between the city leaders and additional communities, including Rastafari. And in one scenario, establishing a secretariat for the sovereign liberty of Rastafari to reside within one of the buildings for a multiple number of floors, for offices, ventures, school, learning facilities, cultural facilities, on a number of floors. Because is that just self-promotional and whatever? It is self-promotional. It's not just self-promotional. It's self-promotional, and it's further. Because what Rastafari brings is vitality, energy, positivity. It's not perfect, but it brings youth. It brings nature. It brings the things that the city needs. It brings traditional family values. It brings a respect for other cultures. It brings a championing of nature, plants, water, health, ITAL, so that, excuse me, ITAL belches almost, such that a Rastafari secretariat in the middle of public square naturally, organically vitalizes, revitalizes, further vitalizes public square, because the people who go there bring that energy and that harmony, that well-being. The policies accommodate that, attune with that, naturally and organically, non-judgmentally, respectfully. And so the conditions around the secretariat become increasingly vital and ital. So that's one of the things that is observed and considered from the recent experience. And that's, again, it's other than for the benefit of the charity of Rastafari. It's for the benefit of the city of Cleveland, Ohio, the United States of America, and the world. Because it's what the world needs now. Facts. Straight facts. All right. So going on to that topic further about Rastafari, what we look at this moment is actually economic cooperatives with Rastafari, within Rastafari, getting staples like rice, and additionally, I mentioned before the economic co-op, and the challenges that we have therein. So now, after a period of a certain hiatus and a lull in that kind of earnest, kind of organizing and discipline, economic discipline, what we're looking at now is resuming that specifically within the fold and concentration of Rastafari. So going to kinfolk whom we have relationship and building a relationship with in Rastafari, and saying, okay, who within the community is making is producing rice, is cultivating rice, who can supply rice, what are businesses, what are the who is distributing it, and what are the methodologies, what is the network for distribution, and additionally what is offered, rice, beans, flour, grains, the things. We look at things that are further available to store over long durations, spices, and agriculture along these lines. So that's one of the things that we are looking at the moment in that respect. Amidst all these things that are communicated and articulated and coordinated and eventuated. Anything else? Oh, one of the things we're also in the middle of as well is with Asona Ashram and Sangha Yosef Rastafari. We are completing, by the grace of the Most High, we are completing registry with a number of agencies or institutions or organizations here in the Cuyahoga area, ethnic-based organizations. One is the Federation of Indian Community Associations. Another one is the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Cleveland. Another one is the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce here in Cleveland. There are a number of reasons for this. Diplomatic, economic, considerably. Obviously, there's the ethnic, social, cultural experience of this as well. But this is part of the, I don't want to say strategic, but this is the part of the diplomatic relations of Sangha Yosef and the Sona Ashram. And I think I leave the explanation for that at that for this moment. So yeah, that's where we're going to keep that. And then anything else for the moment? Oh. The fatigue factor is considerably getting it. We continue to work on marriage and family, relationship, household, clan, village, spiritual community. Those are continuing priorities. When we look at individual well-being, individual health, we talk about the different components of well-being, body, mind, heart, and spirit. So when we look at our individual well-being, those are four components that we look at. What we do in each of those respects, it's all connected, it's all related. Each one affects the other, but there are certain things we do that particularly influence our well-being in any one of those respects: body, mind, heart, and spirit. Then the further consideration is when we look at being in a relationship with somebody else, particularly a husband and wife. The recognition is that husband and wife becoming one body and one mind and one heart and one spirit. And the work, the intentionality, the discipline, the diligence, the patience, the trust, the faith, the cooperation, the coordination that is involved for man and woman to go from each being an individual into being one body, one mind, one heart, and one spirit, um, simultaneously and respectively. So that's what's involved, and that's pertaining to the experience of a relationship between a husband and wife. But then there's the experience of a community as one body, one mind, one heart, and one spirit. So again, looking at the things we do as individuals for that experience of well-being, but then looking at the things we do as a community for the experience of that well-being, and the things that are done within the community that cause the detriment of that. So that recognizing that, when somebody does that in our community and we're part of this community, that's affecting our well-being in that particular aspect. Which is why it is fundamental to have a code of discipline for the entirety of the community, because the behavior of any one person, when any one being within the community, affects the well-being of each being in the community. So part of the process of cultivating village experience is progressing beyond these presumptions of individual liberties. So if I can do whatever I want, nobody can tell me what to do. And instead recognizing that we each have a responsibility to our collective, to our community. And it's not just a matter of what we want to do ourselves individually, but recognizing how we affect others in our community. And our community being strong enough to hold each other accountable for that behavior and lack thereof. So that is much of it at this moment. We still have an orange. I guess what I'll say again, as I said before, just a reminder, we are outside of society. We're not better than, we're not worse than. But it's beneficial to recognize that, like, how is it that we make avail ourselves to all these things that are provided from, presumably from society? Animals eat all types of stuff, utilize all different types of utensils. We are very similar to humans. We are different. No better, no worse. Different. One of the fundamental differences between ourselves and humanity is predatoriness. We are not predators. One of the things that we recognize or observe is that experience of that predatory chromosome is what differentiates humanity from us. And the nature of that predatory chromosome is that it is volitional. It is an individual's choice whether to possess that predatory chromosome. So anybody at any moment can move from humanity to a different state of being. Easier said than done. And further done with duration. That's one of the things that precludes us from determining or definitively, well, we can't, it's difficult for us to say who is and who is not because, again, it depends upon the individual's volition. There are predatories in every religion. There are predators within Rastafari. So it's not specific and exclusive along religious lines or ethnic lines or class lines. One of the things we observe about it, though, is this. The predatory chromosome amongst humans is acquired during the course of life. Oftentimes it's simply latent. It can be further pronounced during certain episodes than other episodes. And at any point, either way, according to personal volition, it can be relinquished or conjured. When it comes to competition between species of humanoids, there's propensity for procreation across the lines of predator and non-predator. Just like there's propensity for procreation between different types of primates. That might be perceived as evidence of shared speciesdom, but it's fundamentally different. We can talk about language, utilization of devices and tools that's shared amongst the different species of humanoids. Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily make people or beings the same category altogether. And deer walk the roads, and other species utilize the infrastructure that certain humanoids construct. Doesn't mean those animals are the same species. There are very strong similarities, there's very strong compatibility, there's very strong communication between the species of humanoids. There's still fundamental distinction. I'm gonna keep it at that because there's some further things, but I'm gonna keep it at that because it's enough. I'm already fatigued. It's at 3.5 hours at this point. Still got some. Excuse me. Oh, I must be getting ready to wrap this joint up because now we're getting the belchy belch. So, I'm just keep it at that. In terms of uplifting message, send off everything. 3.5 hours dedicated, devoted to hear. What up? How's that for inspiration? Yay! But seriously, well, energy level's low. It's past midnight at this point. I have yet to do anything else aside from this in terms of notes or preparation for the week. Now what I'm doing has implications in terms of my translate. Google Translate. What I do at this moment has implications about my propensity to wake up and complete prayers and meditation mañana. It's approaching Easter, so I say much of what I have to say at this point. There's a few poems that are currently watched during Shabbat. One particularly involves jazz and djembe. So I'm going to continue here, but I'm going to turn off the device. We also consider discipline when it comes to communication via the internet, particularly email, social media. The conditions that are imposed, the very rigid categories and reasons for utilizing devices, the preset forms that narrow people into specific categories of utilization and identification, self-identification. Initially, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's not a big deal because the context of it. But now, this is like government information at this point. Signing on to an email account or whatever. What are you utilizing these purposes for? Or what's the purpose of utilizing these services for? Who's utilizing these? And this and the other. It's not even a matter of like worrying about government implications about it. It's just it's just the formality and the intensity and the severity of the questions and who's asking the questions in terms of these huge um, corporate entities of communication. It's not even a matter of worried about like criminal activities or criminal lawsuits or whatever, but just it's not even a matter of necessarily what the corporate entities do, the communications entities. It's a matter of the weight of how one self-identifies and how one commits oneself in the response that one provides and how limiting that is, not just for the purposes of that particular service, but for other things that the person does in life. Just by answering that, particularly for people who are very honest and people who like take one's word very seriously. Some people just fill things out and it doesn't mean that much, but when people take things seriously, to be told put these rigid questions, and the only way to complete the registration is to complete all the questions in the way that it's in the terms, just like with the whole thing about being mixed and identifying as one. Serious implications. So and at this point, these companies have the weight of government. And thus, these rigidities have the oppression of government as well. It behooves the consideration of whether we utilize this as well. Because if this is something that would be intolerable for a government to impose upon somebody, then we should consider how much tolerable or not these requirements and impositions are when put upon by big companies, media companies. And we try to find out, okay, where are the ethical email service providers? Where are the ethical tech companies? search engines, and additionally, so just like in cultivating a directory of Rastafari suppliers, there's the benefit of cultivating a directory of ethical tech companies for different categories, from hardware to software, service providers, and further. Satellites. And meanwhile, we give all thanks and praise to the Most High. Oh, one of the other things that we're doing, God willing, is a study group. Finding I is the Zoom call, Mondays from 9 to 12, God willing. And then what is suggested to us is convening a weekly study group within Rastafari for studying a portion of the autobiography of His Majesty Haile Selassie and Her Majesty Wazir Amanin, so that by the completion of a year, one full reading of the entire autobiography is completed. Exciting, enthralling. Captivating and liberating. Trying to think of what the all things that praise the Most High, Elohim. Peace and blessings, Rastafari.